Okay, so I hope you can see it. Now don't worry, I'll zoom in, zoom out as in when it's necessary. Initial impressions about this reading comprehension is that this was, I thought, a little bit more towards the difficult side, moderate difficult, you can say. Also, the questions were a little, challenging, but again, I mean, not excruciatingly painful in terms of the language of the RC. Okay, so much so, let's delve into it. Suppose the biblical story of creation were true. God created the universe in 6 days, including all the laws of physics and the physical constant that apply throughout the universe. Now imagine that one day God became bored and doubled the gravitational constant. What would it be like to live through such a change? We'd all be pulled towards the floor, many buildings would collapse, bird would fall from the sky, the earth would move closer to the sun, re-establishing orbit in a far hotter zone. Now see, the first paragraph basically gives too many information. First of all, there's a hypothetical situation. So this is going to be an RC reading comprehension passage which will have a lot of arguments in it. Okay, because the moment I see there is an hypothetical situation presented, it's an example, and then the author will expand on that example. I know for a fact that this is going to be a difficult one. Okay, I will not at all choose this one as my first priority list whenever I'm taking a mock test or a sectional test. Okay, so this is never in my first priority. Do I have to explain the first part? I don't think so. It's pretty self-explanatory. Okay, we'll read ahead. It is just an example that, if one day God just decided that, we will change the laws of the world, how, we will get impacted from those changes. Okay, so now let's read ahead. Let's rerun this thought experiment in the social and political world. The US Constitution was an exercise in intelligent design. For example, in Federalist number 10, James Madison wrote about his fear of the power of factions, not fraction. So do not misread the words. Okay, so this is again an interesting word. If you want to maybe read, you can read it about it. Just give me 1 second. Yeah. So faction, by which he meant strong partisanship or group interest that inflamed man with mutual animosity. We are again getting a good word, animosity, and made them forget the common good. He thought that the vastness of the United States would make hard for anyone to spread outrage over such large distances. The Constitution included mechanisms to slow things down, let passions cool, and encourage reflection and deliberation. So basically, again, connecting passage 1 to passage 2, one fine day God decides that, what, I will wreak havoc on the world. Okay, I'll increase the gravitational constant, I'll do this, I'll do that. Similar thing can happen in the current day situation also. The thought experiment in the paragraph 1 is, continued in the paragraph number 2. What happens if, some politically charged group or something of that sort, decides that there is a sort of animosity. Animosity basically means the hatred of some sense. So if that thing, encourages in groups of men, what would happen then? So basically it would become very difficult for democracy to sustain, because we are talking about strong partisans. Strong partisans means, hypothetically speaking, let's take a very hypothetical example that will make my life easier in terms of giving an example. Suppose BJP and Congress started fighting. Okay, I don't want to expand on that. This is what exactly is given in the paragraph number 2. So we'll read now. We'll read this one. But what would happen to American democracy if one day in the 21st century a technology appeared that so basically paragraph 2 also said that the mechanism of the Constitution of the US was designed in such a way that there were mechanisms that were in place which would keep a check on these things, that a sudden political strong partisanship or a strong political party will not be able to exercise that sort of a nonsense, because mechanisms were already in the place. So this was also a highlighting argument that was present in paragraph number 2. A technology, so now we're coming to this. A technology appeared that over a course of decade changed several fundamental parameters of social and political life. What if this technology greatly increased the amount of mutual animosity? I again explain animosity, the hatred, mutual hatred, and the speed at which this outrage spread. Might we witness the political equivalent of a building collapsing, bird falling, blah blah blah, earth moving closer to sun? Can something like that happen in this setup? Definitely. Now I don't know how we are going to do that mechanism, but we know that it is quite doable. Okay, now we are coming into the idea. Now they are giving you the real threat. In the paragraph number 3 we are talking about there could be a threat. Paragraph number 4 will talk about that threat, probably, because I'm building logically on that idea. Facebook's early mission was to make the world more open and connected, and in the first days of social media, many people assumed that a huge global increase in connectivity would be good for democracy. As social media has aged, however, optimism has faded and the list of known or suspected harms has grown. Online political discussions are experienced as angrier and less civil. So this is something that Facebook did not wanted, but it is happening as Facebook is growing older and older. Online discussions are getting angrier and the experience are becoming less civil. Networks of partisans co-create worldviews that become more and more extreme. Disinformation campaign flourish. Now we have to pay attention to this word, disinformation campaign. Violent ideologies lure recruit. Now we don't really need to go too much into this. This is actually happening in the current world setup, so we really do not need to expand on this. Okay, so that way this was pretty readable one. Okay, so now we'll read into this one. The problem may not be connectivity itself, but rather the way social media turns so much communication into public performance. This is a very important line, that why is Facebook, why is it happening? Because the social media turns up so much communication into a public performance. The philosopher Justin Tosi, Brandon Womk have proposed the useful phrase moral grandstanding. Okay, so there's a new term, moral grandstanding. I don't know what that is. Let's read about it. Moral grandstanding to describe what happens when people use moral talk to enhance their prestige in public forum. Okay, so basically अपना पल्ला झाड़ रहे हैं, अपने आप को अच्छा बना रहे हैं, ठीक है. Sorry for Hindi. Like a succession of orators speaking to a skeptical audience. Okay, skeptical audience. This is again important. Each person strives to outdo the previous speaker, leading to some common pattern. Grandstanders tend to turn up moral charges, pile up on in cases of public shaming, announce that anyone who disagrees with them is obviously wrong, or exaggerate emotional display. Nuance and truth are casualties. Okay, this is again important. You have to understand that trump up moral charges, pile up on in cases of public shaming, announce that anyone who disagrees with them is obviously wrong. So whatever I am saying is right, whatever everybody else is doing is wrong. That is moral grandstanding. Okay, मैं अपना पल्ला झाड़ रहा हूँ. Okay. Nuance and truth are casualties in this competition to gain approval of the audience. All this is done for the approval of the audience. Grandstanders scrutinize every word spoken about their opponent for the potential to evoke public outrage. They want to evoke public outrage. Context collapses, the speaker's intent is ignored. Now again, we don't really need to understand too much about this thing. The main idea again is that moral grandstanding. If there is one word that can sum up the entire this thing, moral grandstanding. अपना पल्ला झाड़ रहे हैं, ठीक है. We'll go into this one. Okay, these are the last two paragraphs. As the Yale Just give me 1 second, friends. Yeah. As the Yale psychologist Molly Crockett has argued, the normal forces that might stop us from joining an outrage mob, such as time to reflect and cool off, or feeling of empathy for a person being humiliated, are attenuated. This is a very important word, attenuated. We don't really need to understand the exact meaning, but you have to understand the comprehension behind the attenuation. Attenuation, again, I am giving you the meaning because we are doing an analysis, we are learning things. Attenuation basically means we are increasing this thing. Okay, I may be wrong also. Yeah, when we can't see the person's face, and when we are basically attenuation can also mean cut down. It can either be to increase or decrease. Okay, so that was, I mean, you are just comprehending what you're not opening a dictionary all the time and making the sense of exact meanings. I hope that makes sense. When we can't see the person's face and when we are asked many a times a day to take a side by publicly liking the condemnation. Now see, the main idea, what does the main idea or the argument present in this paragraph? The argument is that normal forces do not allow us to join a mob. So maybe if there is some sort of outrage that is happening, okay, so we all know about JNU incidents. I'm sorry, I am again, taking you out of context, but we have to give some context. This is an analysis. So taking JNU into context, okay. There are so many students in Delhi University also, other university also, they don't join the cause of JNU because, there is some time for people to think. There is some time for people to feel empathy towards the other side also. Maybe, there are people who are empathizing with the JNU students on certain agendas. I neither, support that nor, dissuade that. But then I'm saying that the empathy can come into the picture, some time to reflect on or cool off can also come into this picture, and these guys can actually make sure that outrageous number of people do not join the mob. That is something that is heavily lacking in the social networking cycle. The social networking, the Facebook quote unquote, is heavily lacking, wherein you are supposed, where you are asked many a times a day to take side by publicly liking the condemnation. So you have to pick a side. You cannot say that I'm independent of the thoughts. You have to pick a side. Either you are pro this, you are not pro that. Okay, let's read the last one. In other words, social media turn many of our most politically engaged citizen into Madison's nightmare. Do I really need to know what Madison's nightmare is? No. Arsonists who compete to create the most inflammatory posts and images which they can distribute across the country in an instant, while their public sociometer display how far their creations have traveled. Now see, Madison, I think, is this person who has the Constitution fellow. Okay. Yeah, so the Constitution, the Federalist number 10, James Madison's, okay, he basically thought that, there will be mechanisms and democracy will be upheld no matter what. There are mechanisms that in the Constitution of the US democracy that will help us cool down things. But then Facebook suddenly is that other end of the spectrum, wherein suddenly an arsonist can put things into fire. So basically, arsonist is somebody who can put flames to properties. We have mota understood the argument. The argument is pretty much they're bashing Facebook, not exactly bashing Facebook, but they're actually giving they're giving their arguments in a cautious tone, if that can be the word. Okay, so let's go to the questions. Let's see how the questions are. I'm pretty sure the questions are going to be interesting. According to the passage, Madison would agree that social media turns politically engaged citizen into all of the following except. Now please understand, I would like to take this opportunity to say that all the statements are true, one is false. So you are supposed to find out which is false. Hate-mongering propagandists. Okay, I'll keep that. I mean, that is true, of course. So I'll not keep that. This is not true. Grandstanding moralist. This is something that is, that is been given in the, I will expand on it. Let me read the other option. Fake news peddlers. Okay, fake news peddlers. I don't think I have anywhere read fake news peddlers. So I don't think there is any fake news thing. Intolerant bigots, definitely. Intolerant is the word. The arson is the last paragraph saying that, the Madison's worst nightmare can come into the picture, that people become let me take you to the, otherwise I'll just be blabbering. Nightmare arsonists who compete to create most inflammatory posts and images. So this is the intolerant people, okay, the intolerant bigots. Okay, so basically this is also false because this is given in the passage. Goes out. Grandstanding moralists, already I have eliminated. So fake news peddler, definitely, because it is not given in the passage, so this is out of scope, because nowhere it is written fake news or something of that sort. Okay, fake news as this thing is not there, at least from James Madison's point of view. Okay, we can agree to disagree, but in the comments, but let's go ahead. The author's purpose for the first paragraph in relation to the passage. First paragraph is the biblical story. God is increasing the constant of gravitation and all that nonsense. Okay, and what is the relation of that first paragraph to the entirety? Let's read the options and try and understand. Explain how the huge global increase in connectivity in the early 21st century has unexpectedly undermined democracy and fostered hate speech. Basically, the first option has used undermined democracy and fostered hate speech. This is not how we can connect number one, passage one, or other paragraph one to the rest of the paragraphs. So this goes out. Draw parallels between the physical world governed by physical laws and our social world governed by political laws. Definitely not. This is not the reason why God, the idea of God and then Facebook comes into the picture. Caution the reader about the fundamental changes that new social media may be bringing about in our social and political life. Could be the reason, because God one day ramping up the gravitational constant. Same thing Facebook is also doing. So in a way, I'll keep this for the time. I'll read the last one. Caution about the impending collapse of the social and political order brought about by the new technologies of the 21st centuries. Okay. Caution about the impending collapse of the social and political order. Are we talking about the collapse of social and political order in any which way? I don't think so. So this is out again. So 3 should be the answer. Okay, this question. The author calls US Constitution an exercise in intelligent design because, please understand, James Madison mechanism are placed so that, strong partisanship. BJP, Congress do not fight with each other, and even if they fight, that should not destroy democracy. Okay, BJP, Congress is not given in the passage. I'm just using analogy. Okay, so analogically, you can solve this thing. Okay. I will again read the question. The author calls the Constitution an exercise in intelligent design, because it is based in the belief that God created the universe and the laws of physics. No, definitely nothing to do with the biblical God. It is envisaged and incorporated mechanisms to protect democracy from establishing forces. This could be my answer, so I'm keeping it. Okay, basically this is why the mechanism, everything what Madison said, that we are designing the democracy in such a way that two strong partisans will not be even if they fight, because of the vastness of America, it will not be spreading into that greater speed. Number one. Number two, there are mechanisms that will slow down if there will be a cooling effect. It takes into account the group interest or factions that could promote common good. No. It took advantage of the vastness of the country to ensure that passion spread slowly. See, this is a point, but this point is also the mechanism. This is not the only intelligent intelligent exercise or the exercise in intelligent design. So this is not just the only thing. The vastness is one of the mechanism, but not the only mechanism. Okay. So that means that number 2 is going to be the answer. Let's read this question. The author cites all of the following as reason behind social media changing our social and political world, except, difficult question, not difficult, interesting question. All of them are true, one is false. Okay. The constant expose, let me highlight something. Reason behind social media changing our social and political world are true. So there are, there are examples given. Let's read the options. The constant exposure to toxic partisan grandstanders. Okay, I'll keep that. Transformation of individuals from being private citizen to public orator. This is something that happens. Moral grandstanders are the ones. मैं सही हूँ, मेरे पार्टी ने सब सही किया है, the other one is the criminal culprit, and basically moral grandstanding comes into this thing. Okay, so this is out actually. This is true. I'm sorry, this is a true statement, so goes out. The boost in online status offered by the social media. Okay, so yes, this is also true because that is when the partisanships comes into the picture. Okay. The lack of face-to-face interaction, that is also a reason behind social media changing our social and political world, because this time around the cooling of phase is not there. So lack of face-to-face interaction is definitely one of the reasons. It is written. I am not taking you back to the passage, but ideally I should. So let me take you back to the passage. It is written over there that let me take you to this one, that the okay, just give me 1 second, let me exactly take you back to this one. Yeah, so as the Yale cycle, okay, let me change the color. As the Yale psychologist Molly Crockett has argued that normal forces may stop us from joining an outrage mob. And what are the parameter, what are the forces? So we are talking about the forces, which is the time to reflect and cool off, the feeling of empathy, something of that sort. So that is definitely one of the reason that the lack of face-to-face interaction is one of the reason behind social media changing our social and political this thing. So option 4 goes out. The boost in online status offered by the social media, definitely the moral grandstanders. This is what I was saying now. Okay, I will come into this thing, whatever I say is the right thing. I am God, basically, quote unquote, not the God that we are referring in the paragraph number 1, but whatever I'm saying is right, whatever you are saying is wrong, because I am a moral grandstander. Okay, so this is also goes out. So the answer to this is, and again, please understand, the constant exposure to toxic partisan grandstander, exposure to toxic partisan grandstander, what is an exposure? What is an exposure to toxic? There is no element of toxic partisan grandstanders. Okay, so this line itself, I think, I mean, again, I don't like to say this again and again. Even if it is true, it is out of context. Okay, so I think this is the, okay, there's the last one. Based on the passage, all of the following are actions that grandstanders on social media are likely to commit, except. Okay, let's read the ones. Point out to a person traveling from US to Europe for a vacation that the carbon footprint of transatlantic air travel is one of the major contributors of climate change. So this is basically an habit of a person who will say such type of things, right? Ki tumhare wajah se, climate change and all that. So basically, again, hate mongering. This is not hate mongering, but this is accusing somebody of something. So please understand that these are the actions of moral grandstandard or grandstanders in general on social media. They likely commit, except. So we are supposed to find out all of them are true. So these are the habits of moral grandstanders, except. So accusing somebody of carbon footprint, definitely, so goes out. Okay, understand why it is going out. Request colleagues to evaluate their behavior and ring in gradual changes that would make the workplace a more inclusive. Aha, kitna sant jaisa state. This statement itself is so sant-like. Ki request colleagues to evaluate their behavior. So this is the answer. I don't really think you need to go. Accuse the speaker. Publicly castigate. I hope I don't have to go further. Thank you.